Okay, greetings, brothers and sisters. So I just did kind of what I considered an epic video about how Netanyahu, today's Thursday, October 2nd, about how Netanyahu just came out and said he owns America, basically, and can take away our freedom of speech and is conducting a propaganda campaign using the youth and the recently purchase of, or the hopeful for him purchase of TikTok by Jewish billionaires and all this shit. They're just going to go out there and try to brainwash Americans, and anybody who is critical of Israel is an insane Nazi. I mean, he said all that shit and basically admitted to offing Charlie Kirk because he said this is a war, right? Um, so Tucker Carlson, I just listened to this, did an epic takedown of Israel, and it's informative, it's factual, these things. Now, before you tell me how big a piece of shit Tucker Carlson is and that he works for the CIA and all those things, remember that what I always say, that anybody has a microphone in front of them is controlled in some way. But all of us are controlled by a system in ways that we're not even aware of. We've all been indoctrinated into the system. I mean, I know everyone likes to feel so much better about, that you're in the truth community and somehow you're better than sheeple. But you're not. Like, you're just it's all on a spectrum. But Tucker Carlson has done two very, excellent bits recently. The one where he took down Ted Cruz, which my wife and I listened to, and that was epic, and it was enjoyable and it was funny. And this piece right here, where he takes down Israel. Now, he has this moment of taint licking. And for those of you who don't like my swearing and things and all that stuff, the reason I say taint licker is, there's a level of being a sellout where you can be called a cocksucker, right? Like I used to say, Jimmy Kimmel got on his knees and serviced Hunter Biden when Hunter Biden came out with that this is how and why I smoked crack book. It was a picture pop-up book for kids. And, I said he got on his knees and serviced him. But, there is got to be something worse than that, right? Now, I thought of ass liquor, which is pretty gross, comparison. I mean, compared to being a cocksucker, but taint liquor seems to be like the worst. And maybe there's something worse than that, but that's bad enough. And any of these people that just bow before Trump and service him, like Tucker Carlson does in this thing. Like, this is a brilliant thing he does. But there's a moment, which I'm not going to show you, where he says that Trump has finally pushed back against Netanyahu when Netanyahu came out and said he owns America, and says that he's not going to let Israel occupy the West Bank. And this guy pushes back against that, and I'll show you that piece. But I'm going to start here because this is the part I was just listening to.
Vote base, which is also a real thing. To tell you the truth, none of it really adds up.
I agree.
In full, because this is not in America's interest. It's not in America's interest to be isolated in the world together with a murderous rogue state, which is, sad to say, what the Israeli government has become.
So this guy was just talking about how Netanyahu shows up at Congress and gets a standing ovation like 57 times. And it's inexplicable, even with them being sold out to AIPAC. He was talking about Israel just goes in and yells at the UN and all the member states about how they're so much better than them and they're right and everyone else is wrong. And how, America is taint licking. My words, not his.
It is the most lawless state in the whole world right now. It's committing massive war crimes. It is, as Netanyahu said, at war in 7 fronts. If you're at war in 7 fronts, that's pretty weird. That shows you don't have diplomacy. You have war as a policy. And of course, Netanyahu does have war as a policy. And, Tucker, I am at the UN a lot, so I am in the UN Security Council a lot, listening or participating in UN sessions, and the UN, the Israeli politicians come and they yell at the whole rest of the world.
Okay, good. This is a part way.
And they yell at them in the most vulgar, stupid, puerile, and absolutely imbalanced and irrational way. And then the U.S. representative says, yes, yes, we are with Israel. So if you ask me why this is fundamentally, first, it's disgusting. Second, it is no rational basis. And third, if it is the money, the lobbying, the mass media propaganda, the really strange beliefs of some people, whatever it is, even all of that, for my mind, doesn't add up, because a president of the United States should be able to figure this out a little bit better, that this is absolutely not in America's interest, and we do not have a military that is to be handed out to another country to do whatever reckless things that country is doing. And right now, Israel is not only doing reckless things, it is committing a genocide. And that is not my opinion. That is the opinion pervasively of both scholars and specialists in this matter, and in Israeli human rights organizations, in countless observers inside Israel and observers all over the world. So the U.S. is actually, and I'm sorry to say it, complicit in genocide right now.
Of course.
A president should be able to figure this out. And they don't. And so when you ask me this question, I can give you a list of answers, but somehow it doesn't add up for me, because this is not so hard to figure out that we are on a terribly wrong track.
I agree with you completely. I've thought about it a lot.
Okay, so, he did taint like earlier Trump. Let's go back to the beginning here.
And we should...
Here we go.
Shut up!
Okay, let's go back a little bit more.
Generally speaking. So probably the more aggressive side are the deranged Taliban level. There's a lot going on in the world right now, but if you're on social media, and of course you are, because it's really America's only remaining news source, there's only one story going on, and it's Israel. Everyone online is arguing about Israel, and really they fall into one of two camps, generally speaking. So probably the more aggressive side are the deranged Taliban level ethno-narcissists who are telling you that any criticism of the secular government of Israel is tantamount to blood libel against the Jewish people. And if you think that maybe it was not a great idea to arm...
Blood libel, right? This bullshit victim consciousness. If you watch my videos, if you haven't heard me talk about victim consciousness, I worked as... I got a master's degree in counseling. And I worked as a clinician in treatment centers 2 different times, once as a counselor and another time as a clinician. Before I had my master's degree, I worked as a counselor. And, with both places we use this Pathways workbook, which is supposedly, I believe in it as being a good psychological tool. It just isn't all that effective because, the clients don't want to change, right? But they have this thing called the assault cycle. And the beginning of the assault cycle is always a victim stance, a poor me statement, right? And when anybody is a perpetual victim, people who believe in God cannot be victims. Like, if you believe in God, then you have to believe everything comes from God and that there's a plan. And if there's a plan, then you're not a victim, because things are happening for a reason and not because of some random thing, a chaotic thing that's happening, right? If things are chaotic, then you can completely be a victim, because there are things that are happening that are unfair to you. The other thing is that people don't want to admit to or look into is past lives, because you might be the great person or a nice person in this life, but what have you done in the past that is coming back around in your life without any real understanding of it, right? And so when people use victim consciousness and victim statements, And the Israeli government and the Zionists do this more than anybody else. It's so annoying. We see it now with Charlie Kirk. We'll get to that probably this video. I'm going to go back and see Erica Kirk, some music video, the making of it, some weird shit that was going on with that. Revisit that a little bit. All that stuff. But the victim consciousness, when anybody's doing it, it's an immediate deal breaker. It's manipulative, and it's not true.
Joseph Stalin, the greatest murderer in history, then you're a Holocaust denier. Shut up. And then on the other side, a group every bit as obsessed with Jews are the people who hate Jews, who are telling you that anyone who's Jewish is bad by virtue of being Jewish. It's a blood thing. Two things are interesting. One, there are very few kind of conventional Christian voices saying, wait a second, this is a secular government, another country, and it has probably nothing to do with my religion or anybody's religion. And we should never judge people on the basis of their immutable qualities because guilt and virtue are not passed down genetically. But almost no one is saying that. So you really have the ethno-narcissists and the anti-Semites, and they're at war with each other. That's the online picture. What's even more interesting and maybe even more distressing is that in the U.S. government, the conversation, while much more muted, is a mirror of this in that a lot of the conversation is about Israel. Israel, a tiny country in the Middle East. Not critical to our national security, by the way.
So he's going to say things that I've been saying, other people have been saying for a while. But he has some interesting statistics here, which I thought were worth listening to.
But the conversation, the bandwidth, is consumed by questions of Israel. So wherever you stand on Israel, whether you're on one of the two sides just described or neither one of them, you know in your gut that this is bad. If a country like ours, supposedly the most powerful in the world, is devoting all of its time internally to conversations about Israel, it's probably not going in a good direction. There's probably a lot being neglected in favor of this very specific boutique conversation about this tiny little country.
Let me just say this, too. I said this in a recent video that we live in a time of fuck you, right? Like I talked about this being every year I have this, this was the year of the chaos. December, sometime before the new year, I say what the theme of the next year is going to be. And, it's kind of a little bit that I do. Aside from being the year of the chaos, and maybe next year will be the year of fuck you, it's when the government tells 80% of the population, whether it be Trump or his minions, his acolytes, and they say, we know you don't like this, we're doing it anyway, right? So there's a video clip, I think I have it up, where Trump is praising Pfizer with RFK Jr. on the stage. I mean, all these things that happen where, it's just complete, shutting down of something that you hoped would happen, right? But Netanyahu's saying what he's saying. He's coming down and saying, I own you, and we'll see if there's anything that America can do about it. That if America can break free of Israel. Because he owns the politicians, they own the media, they own the corporations. And so if they effectively shut down American dissent on the internet and censor those people, right, on social media, and or they let those people talk and they still does it and win more people are more won over to this idea. We're now at more than 50% of people want to stop their support of Israel. So that's half the population, right? And if it doesn't happen, if the support from Israel doesn't happen and America doesn't stand up for itself, Tucker Carlson is going to talk about how small Israel is, which I think is the likely outcome, then we know that they own America and there's nothing anybody can do about it. Almost everything is like that. You think that you have a voice and you think that, this is why people protest, and protests are stupid. Because they don't care and they don't, even if everyone's against them, they still have to do this. I'm not talking just about Israel, I'm talking about everything. They have to bring in martial law. They have to reduce your lifestyle. They have to default on the debt or whatever's going to go down. They have to start another war. They have to reduce the population. Whether you want to say all these people are evil and heartless, yeah, that's true, or whatever they suck, they're reptilian, whatever you want to call these so-called elitists, they don't have a choice but to do drastic measures because our system's imploding. It's collapsed morally first. People have gotten weaker and weaker, and that's caused huge problems. We're overpopulated. That's an issue. And then the debt-based economic system it's a joke now, right? Like it's laughable. So what you're going to see more and more is them saying "fuck you" to the majority of people complaining, right? When they impose a change in your lifestyle, it doesn't matter what you say, and you don't have a voice in it. This is not a democracy, and it never was.
Just not good for anybody, including Israel, by the way. So what's the antidote to this? How do you fix it? Here are 4 things you can do to make the conversation about Israel and the relationship with Israel a lot healthier than it currently is. Here are the 4. The first is get some global perspective on what we're talking about. The United States is a nation of 350 million people. It has some of the deepest natural resources in the world. That would include energy and water, agricultural products. The United States, however it's managed, is a powerhouse globally and always will be because its strength is inherent. It's a huge, decisive country in the scope of world history. The United States makes things happen. Israel is not an insult, merely an observation. By contrast, is a tiny and inherently insignificant country, at least geopolitically, in that it has only 9 million people and no natural resources, no meaningful natural resources. So it is insignificant. It is also physically tiny. It's about the size of New Jersey, famously, but it has a much smaller GDP than New Jersey. It is a much smaller economy than the state of New Jersey. It has an economy about the size of the state of Arizona and almost 1/2 the economy of the state of Massachusetts or Illinois. It just doesn't really matter, actually, if you're looking at a map and thinking.
Him saying that you could change the conversation by knowing these things, sure. You could win debates. You could, when you're talking about things, you can point these things out. But it's not going to change anything, right? Like this guy saying at the end, he doesn't understand why Israel owns fucking Americans, right? The American politicians and people don't stand up to them. And if you don't understand it, then how the hell are you going to change it? You don't know why it's happening. These guys are in the know. They claim to not know why it's happening or how to stop it. But Tucker Carlson's saying, well, with better information, you can debate better. Sure. Let's say you convince people. You convince 80%. It's not going to change anything. But anyways.
Through, where does power politics go? Israel's not even on the list. Again, it's tiny. It's got the population of Burundi. It's got a smaller population than Belgium. What is this anyway? And yet, despite its objective insignificance, it is the focus of the conversation, but it's also the focus of the spending. So right now, as we speak tonight, there are 2 THAAD missile batteries in Israel. That's 1/4 of the world's total supply of THAAD missile batteries. The THAAD missile battery is an American-made, very high-tech missile battery that takes incoming missiles out of.
So he's talking about the Iron Dome, and Trump said, yeah, we should get an Iron Dome too. Right? Like Israel has things that we don't have. This is like great stuff that he's doing here. He's saying they have no money, they have no natural resources, they have shitty little economy, an insignificant population, in a small state, a small country that's basically the size of New Jersey. New Jersey is a tiny little state, right? If you look at the eastern states, Connecticut, New Jersey, they're really small. Like you could fit, like 10 New Jerseys into Arizona or some of these, western states, right? Tiny states. You could, 10, 15 New Jerseys into California, even more into Alaska, right? Tiny. And the whole country's that size. The Gaza Strip is 20 square miles. I mean, nothing, right? I mean, they're small cities. And so, this country that has no resources, 16 million Jews in the world, something like that, 12 million, 16 million Jewish people, and yet they fucking own America, right? It's hilarious, but it's fucking, it's pretty fucked.
The sky. And 1/4 of the world's entire supply of these is in Israel right now, manned by U.S. troops, by Americans. In uniform or not, they are American military personnel, and they are manning these batteries to protect Israel. And that shouldn't surprise you, because since October 7th, 2023, which is a little less than 2 years ago, the United States has spent at minimum $30 billion defending Israel. Huge. And for some perspective, the entire Israeli military budget before October 7th was about $25 billion. So the United States has put at least $30 billion into defending Israel in less than 2 years.
Not defending them, right?
Over the course of its existence, a little less than 80 years, the United States has put $300 billion, at least, those are just the on-books numbers, into supporting Israel. $300 billion. Israel is by far, no one comes close, the largest recipient of U.S. aid over time and currently. So anyone who says, oh, it's just a drop in the bucket, it's totally insignificant, is lying or doesn't know the numbers. By the way, number 2 is Egypt. So why are we spending so much money on Egypt? Well, we're doing it at the request of Israel. So you could probably add that to the tally. It's not an attack. It's merely perspective.
No, it's an attack because they're a parasite. What you've just described is a parasite, right? Something that does nothing for the United States, but gives United States a strategic base, a strategic location in the Middle East, which we also have in some of these other countries there. So, I mean, other than that, it does nothing for America, but sucks up huge amounts of resources, takes American money, bribes American politicians, censors Americans, kills Americans. I mean, all the things, right? I mean, that's happened. They murdered all the people on USS Liberty, not all of them. American naval ship. They murdered them. They bombed them, an unarmed ship that was just gathering data when we were Israel's biggest ally back in whatever that was, 60s. Possibly responsible for JFK, contribution. Possibly responsible for the big event 2001. Lots of evidence to support that, right? And also Charlie Kirk, maybe, right? I mean, definitely the number one suspect is Israel. Donald Trump and Israel are the number one benefactors of Charlie Kirk's death. And all the stuff that's happening now is all things that Israel and Donald Trump want, and the right wing want, Donald Trump people, the MAGA people. So they're the ones who really are benefiting from Charlie Kirk's death or fake death or whatever it is, right? And so
we are spending our time, our money, and we're taking enormous risks on behalf of a country that geopolitically is not significant at all. The interesting thing is, most Americans have no idea that this is true. They don't know how disproportionate our attention to Israel and our spending on Israel is relative to the rest of the world. And if you want some sense of how disproportionate, India and China combined, neither of which is a strong ally at the moment, combined represent more than a third of the entire world's population. Both are rivals economically, both are rivals militarily, at least potentially. And our relationship with them has gotten worse, or is at the very least languished, because of our relationship with Israel, because of the bandwidth consumed by tending to it, and also because of some of the inevitable conflicts that have arisen because of our support for Israel, which is engaged in an extremely controversial, which is to say hated war in Gaza, which is not even really a war. It's a massive displacement of people and killing on a grand scale.
It's genocide, and Trump's 100% on board with it. Trump's a genocider, right? That's the one part he won't go for. But, again, this stuff's coming out. This has not ever been talked about like this, right? By someone, he has more viewers than Israel has population. More people are going to see this than the whole population of Israel, right?
Unarmed people, of unarmed combatants, of civilians, of women and children. And the world sees this, and the world rejects it, and the world hates it. And so Israel's really last remaining ally of size, other than the UK, is the United States. And so there's a huge cost to this. But again, most Americans have no perspective on just how disproportionate our commitment is, because they marinate in lies about this relationship, mostly from our political class, also from the media. But really, if you were to lay the blame on one group in the United States, it's our elected leaders who continuously lie to us about the nature of this relationship, its significance, and they do it generationally. They've been doing it for many decades. Here, and this is just one example, but the most fun to watch. This is Nikki Haley at the Republican presidential primary debate 2023 describing the United States' relationship with the state of Israel. Watch.
Last thing we need to do is to tell Israel what to do. The only thing we should be doing is supporting them and eliminating Hamas. It is not that Israel needs America. America needs Israel.
It's a great clip. He also has one with Lindsey Graham that's even worse. But just, I mean, like based in, everything he just said, he's conducting a great argument here. Israel does, what does Israel do for America? Like anybody know any kind of thing that you could say? I mean, a strategic location, sure. But that's not worth $300 million and all the stuff all the things that Israel gets, right? I mean, we have relationships with a lot of these Middle Eastern countries that would allow American troops in those countries. Qatar has, there's bases all around. There's American bases all around there. And so if they could have that with mild support of Israel, like not this whole blank check shit. Like Israel needs America. Without America, Israel's a parasite. It's a parasite living off America.
It is not that Israel needs the United States. The United States needs Israel. How could that possibly be true?
It can't, Tucker.
It is in no sense true. In fact, it's one of those lies that's not 3 degrees off the truth. It is a complete inversion of the truth. And the truth, which is obvious to anyone who looks at the numbers or is paying any attention at all, is that Israel could not survive without the United States. That's not an argument for pulling all aid to Israel.
I've been saying that forever, because it's obvious. They're in an area where they're surrounded by people that hate them. They have the countries that, they have a 3,000-year-old beef with Arab people, with Muslim/Arab people that started back in the days of Abraham, according to the Bible. At least that's the time frame that's given, 3,000 years. And so all the people around them hate them. And those countries are rich with oil. So those countries have resources. They're much larger countries. And they have more people. They have over 2 billion people. 2 billion Muslims in the world, right? And then other countries, other people that hate them that aren't Muslim. And, they're in this little tiny country with no resources. And somehow, because of the American military, the American host, they're a parasite to the American host, they've been able to survive. It's miraculous that that's happened. Like it's a miracle, in terms of a human manipulate. Not a miracle based in God, but some kind of against all odds, Israel's been able to brainwash the American people and bribe the American politicians with their own money and stay alive somehow. It's like completely fucked.
Israel. It's just an acknowledgement of the physical reality. Israel fights its wars with American backing, with the guarantee, the implied defense guarantee that we have provided for so many years, since at least 1973, 50 years. And its social services are made possible, which are quite generous, made possible by American subsidies. In other words, every dollar that goes to the Israeli military from the United States is a dollar that the nation of Israel can spend on its own people. And so there is no world in which America needs Israel more than Israel needs the United States. And, of course, Nikki Haley was never asked to explain how exactly that could be true. What are you talking about, Governor Haley? Not one person asked her that question. And no one asked her that question because anyone in whose mind that question appeared would have paused for fear of being attacked as an anti-Semite for asking a question about geopolitics.
That you live in fear of saying something that's obvious to a country that's so small. That's how much of a hold they have on America, right? So, it's funny that it's like finally coming out now, but people have known this for a while in the truth community. And, like that thing I said in the last video is an old saying that who your master is by the people you can't criticize. And you cannot criticize Israel, like more than any other demographic or any of these other groups. I mean, you see what happened to RFK Jr. when he said that thing about the Ashkenazi Jews were less susceptible to COVID genetically. Remember, they brought him up and he was supposed to be talking about censorship, and all the Democratic senators, Congress people, when he went in front of the Congress, were the House of Representatives were all attacking him for saying that, calling him anti-Semitic. So we had to go on Rabbi Shmuley's, the guy with the daughter that sells kosher dildos, and he had to go taint lick, right?
That has been the state of play in the United States for my entire life, over 50 years. Politicians make nonsensical statements. Nobody wants to even ask a follow-up question for fear of being attacked. It is a state of perpetual intimidation. Everybody's afraid of Israel, afraid of the topic, afraid, in some cases, of the state itself. We have not had an honest conversation about this ever, certainly not in my lifetime. And that suits the Israelis just fine. And if you're wondering why there's an awful lot of lunatic anti-Semitic comment about Israel online, you have to wonder how much of that is organic. Some of it, of course, there are always haters. But how much of it is not organic at all? How much of that, the lunatic, all Jews are evil, how much of that is being ginned up on purpose to make legitimate questions about the U.S. government's relationship with the government of Israel seem like crackpot stuff?
So what he's talking about here, it's a possibility of like false flag type stuff, right, which we've been talking about in the truth community forever. And if you're going to follow that logic, then wouldn't it make sense that if they're going to use fake anti-Semitic people, fake Jew-hating people, fake Nazis, who are really their disinformation agents on social media and in, wherever it is in America, and maybe even do some false flag type of attacks, then they would also be open to having, an organization like Hamas that was under their control that would attack Israel, and then they were able to justify a genocide based in that, right? Wouldn't that make sense? Like, wouldn't that be the next logical step to that, right?
Hate, like David Duke level lunacy. Probably some, because it serves their interests. Now, that is a criticism of the state of Israel and its incredibly sophisticated propaganda campaign, which, again, the rest of us have been marinating in for a long time. But the true villain here, I would argue, is not the state of Israel, the Jews. It's the United States. It's our leaders who are putting up with this. Israel is a small country with very limited resources, and it is doing its best to serve its own interests. You'd think every country would act that way, and most do. But there are some that don't, and ours would top that list.
Okay, so let's go. So he has the thing here with Netanyahu, which we saw yesterday. Let's watch that again.
And in case you think that's an overstatement, here is the Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, commenting on American politics.
He talked about the woke right, and he said, I call it the woke Reich. That's a brilliant observation. The woke Reich, because these people, they're not any different from the woke left. I mean, they're insane.
They're insane. They're insane in the membrane. Okay, so this is all worth listening to for people, I mean, it's not anything new. It's just that what he and Candace Owens are doing in terms of being, he used to be a mainstream person, and people who have a large audience are talking about things that aren't talked about, like they haven't been talked about forever. Then he has this little piece from Lindsey Graham here.
And among the many examples we could pick, we're going to go, because we couldn't control ourselves, with Lindsey Graham. Watch.
To people in my party, I'm tired of this crap. Israel is our friend. They're the most reliable friend we have in the Mideast. They're a democracy, surrounded by people who would cut their throats if they could. This is not a hard choice if you're an American. It's not a hard choice if you're a Christian. A word of warning. If America pulls the plug on Israel, God will pull the plug on us.
God will kill you if you don't support Bibi Netanyahu.
That's a great moment there. So I wanted to say this here. You know, I've talked about how everybody who calls themselves a patriot, but also a religious person, a.k.a. Charlie Kirk and his incredibly bad acting wife and all these other people, Tucker Carlson, the rest of them, you can't serve two masters. If you serve God, that's all you can serve, right? You can serve God and nothing else. It's exclusive, and it has to be, because at some point there's going to be a conflict of interest between God and America. What's best for America, what you need to do for America, and what you need to do for God, right? You can't serve two masters. It's just that simple. But you certainly can't serve three masters. You can't say you're going to serve God, and you're going to serve America, and you're going to serve Israel, right? Now, Israel and America has conflicting interests. In fact, there's very little that Israel wants us to do that's in America's best interest, right? And that's been for a very long time. There are some things, but most of them not. And certainly these things are not backed by divinity unless, you think about what I've said before, that God wants to take down the structure or the divine beings that are in charge of, these higher developed souls that look over planet Earth and in charge of its spiritual evolution of the people here, that eventually the system has to be taken down. And I think that's now. And so Trump and Netanyahu are doing God's work by creating World War III and destroying the, whatever the system that we're 100% dependent on. So yeah, that can be something there. But still, Israel isn't God, isn't working, following God's orders. They are, going against God's orders in most ways, just like America is. And so you can't support them and also God. You can't work for God and Israel and America. Like what happens when you have a conflict of interest? And you see this in your life. There are things that, that you have multiple masters. You have your family, you have your spouse, you have your job, you have all these people, all these things. And if you start thinking about it in terms of serving all of them, eventually there's going to be a conflict of interest and you have to make choices. Every time there's a divorce, especially the bad ones, the kids have their own interests. Most kids don't want their parents to be divorced at all. So that already goes against their interests. The kids know it's better for them to have both parents at home. If the parents are fighting all the time and one of the parents is abusive, yeah, sure. Sometimes kids are like, yeah, get rid of that piece of shit. But usually not. Usually kids want their parents to stay together. And so as the divorce progresses, the kids usually have to pick one side or the other, especially in terms of, custody and where they live, full-time, all these things. And so, it's just how it works. You can't serve two masters, especially when they have opposing type of needs, right? One parent has to move, out of town, gets another job, whatever happens here. And so you have to make choices. And so these politicians who claim to serve God and serve America, but also Israel, and that, Lindsey Graham's saying, if we don't support Israel, then America's done because God will turn its back on us. And, and he's also gay, right? He's like closetedly gay. I mean, it's just completely fucked. So Tucker Carlson goes in there to sort of defend Trump in all this, saying Trump has finally stood up to him. But this other guy disagrees. So Tucker Carlson did a good job with this, but then this part happened.
It was a cool shower on a hot day. President Trump pushed back, not directly, but you can watch this clip and see that he's had enough. Here is President Trump the other day asked about Israel's plans to annex the West Bank. Watch.
Did you promise leaders this week that you would not allow Israel to annex the West Bank? And is that something that you...
I will not allow Israel to annex the West Bank. No, I will not allow it. It's not going to happen.
Did you speak with Netanyahu about this directly?
Yeah, but I'm not going to allow it. Whether I spoke to him or not, I did. But I'm not allowing Israel to annex the West Bank. There's been enough. It's time to stop.
It's been enough. I will not allow it. He's not just talking about the West Bank there, obviously.
Okay. Trump says shit all the time and then completely reverses himself, often with foreign policy, right? So he's not believable or credible at all. And certainly he's given this is just the thing he's saying now. But then, it'll happen, and then he'll just pretend he never said it, and then say it's fake news and do what, Israel would do and attack the media, right? And so this is the one moment where Tucker, fails because, Trump is completely owned by Netanyahu, and I don't know if they got something on him, a la Jeffrey Epstein, or he just is willing to go along. Whatever it is, he's owned. He's owned, you're trying to talk about Trump pushing back when Netanyahu says over and over again, Donald Trump is the greatest friend Israel has ever had in the White House. I mean, that's what he said about Trump over and over again. He just said it recently, his last visit here. And so Trump is a complete shill for Israel. He's a Netanyahu taint licker. So this guy loved what Tucker Carlson did here, but he disagrees with the Trump thing.
And I have to say, even though we saw just that tape of President Trump saying that, no, Israel will not annex the West Bank. First of all, don't hold your breath, because we've not yet seen an American president for 30 years that has resisted Israel. And I am still fearful that Trump is the same, because, frankly...
What do you mean he's the worst? He's by far the worst. You guys, whatever your love for Trump and your audience, but Trump is the worst. But he's the worst on Israel. He just is. Because they've said it. And Netanyahu just came to America and said, yeah, we're buying TikTok. President Trump made TikTok sell from a Chinese company to an Israeli, pro-Israeli company, to pro-Israeli buyers who are going to censor anti-Israeli stuff with all the young people who are protesting. And it's Charlie Kirk and all these other people who are, taking their shekels. And so, I mean, this is what happened. Under Trump's administration, it's the worst. It's worse now than we've ever seen.
What we have right now, and Netanyahu said so, Israel's involved in 7 wars right now. It's disgusting. They're all over the Middle East in war. They're in war in Gaza. They're in war in the West Bank.
Okay, so, it goes on from here. We know it. This has happened over and over again, and we haven't seen an American president stand up to these guys or politicians or anybody in the media, and they owned America, and we'll see how this plays up. I'd be shocked to see America to stand up and cut ties with Israel. I don't see that happening. Do you see that happening? I mean, it should happen, but I would be shocked if it did. Okay, so I got some comments I'm going to put at the end of the video. Some great comments, and some of it's focused on Dumbfuckistan. We have another. I have the picture of the biblical promised land of Israel, the land that used to be Israel, the Israel of the Bible. And a lot of people are talking about Dumbfuckistan, though. 2 separate places. Dumbfuckistan is more of a construct. And so I got a lot of comments about, and I talked about this in my last video, before I put my last video up. And I got a lot of comments about, oh, don't trust Candace Owens, she's a shill, and the same thing with Tucker Carlson. And I said in my last video, you don't get what I do here. But just to add to that, what does don't trust these people mean? They're part of the show. But even people in your own personal life, how many people do you trust, right? And I'm not talking about just you trust people aren't going to shoot you or kill you, baby. These types of things, the basic, this person's not, a physical threat or whatever. But, in terms of if you at work, people screw you over at work, or do you trust your boss? Do you trust in terms of any of these things? And then, on issues like this, government, politicians, and people in the media, they're non-trustworthy. But none of it matters, because in the total time that I've done this, and I've done this since, I've had this channel since 2007, and I've watched it since, all these kind of things, the truther stuff. There's not been one issue where the truth came out in some accountable way, and you could say the truth community actually won something, right? There's the dumb fuck Trumpers who think they won something. Trump just made a big deal with Pfizer, which I cover in the comment section. Somebody read a comment of it. I got some little clips that I'll probably have to wait till some later video because I'm just not getting around to these things. But in terms of any of these things, these issues, what happened with Jeffrey Epstein? Like, that's gone. Like that looked like that was going somewhere, and then they just shut it down. And it's with all of these things. Now, the people that I call the controllers, they lose all the time. I mean, they have been trying to get the guns, and I think they're going to use Trump now. Trump is going to go after the guns because he's going to say that guns are being used by liberal, crazy fanatics to kill white people. They're pushing that narrative right now. I mean, not the gun part. But I don't know if Trump, they think that he can go. If anybody can get at him, it's him, right? And he's tried to do it before. He doesn't care about that. And, but they've failed up to this point, and they've tried to disarm the American public. And there is, so there's things like that they fail at all the time. Like, they don't always get their way. They don't always get their agenda often fails. And I've described this in the past, that people who are on the dark side of things, they can't manifest things. The closer you are to God, the easier it is for you to manifest things, especially and most importantly, when you're doing God's work, when God is with you. When you're going against God, then it's hard to manifest things. And when you're physically gross, you're spiritually gross, you're blocked from accessing your creative force in these things. These people don't have a lot of creative force, and they're not visionaries. They're following, generational plans here and constructs of disinformation and preventing people from seeing the truth or whatever it is, right? But the one thing that they're good at is making sure the truth doesn't come out. Make sure that people don't see, whatever it is, right? You can go down the rabbit hole, but you never get confirmation. I've been talking about this in recent videos quite a bit. You're never going to get confirmation. You're never going to get the smoking gun. You're never going to get real accountability. And if you did, the system would come down. If people just knew how corrupt and how evil and how demonic and how how much deception and how many lies that you've been told, and even if you wake up to one thing, you're not the fundamental building blocks of your personality happen when you're a kid. You're understanding the world and how it works. Your indoctrination to a system takes a hold of you, and your fundamental building blocks of your character, your personality, how you perceive the world are there. It's just, it's embedded in you. And for Americans, we have our certain way of being. That's why when you see these marriages between an American person and a person from Europe or a person from these other countries, or just having relationships with people from other countries, they see the world through a whole different lens because they've had a different set of indoctrination. Although nowadays we live in a global culture with the internet, so there's an indoctrination that happens globally that's similar. But even with that, it's hard to understand how other people see the world, and they're watching a totally different movie than you are, and so you really can't rewire that. And so all this stuff that people say about I know the truth and I see what's going on, people are just full of shit. That Charlie Kirk is still alive. Yeah, maybe. I'm not saying he isn't, but who knows? You don't know, and you'll never know. And stop thinking right? Stop telling everybody, oh, yeah, I know that I see the truth. I see it, whatever it is. I have pattern recognition, and I see the patterns of things, and, this is the fundamental templates of how they do these things. But you're never going to have any confirmation, because confirmation means death of the country, death of our culture. Because if the truth came out and people could see it, I mean, that's why people are in denial. Because deep down, you should know that when you see the truth, it makes it impossible to keep on going. The more truth you see, it makes it harder and harder for you to function in the system. You get to the point where everything seems pointless. It's depressing. The truth is fucking depressing about our country and our future and what's going to happen. And so you're better off just chugging along and, and preparing for the inevitable collapse in your way and connecting to the divinity within you. That's a way to get the truth. But when you fully connect with the divinity within you, none of these things matter, because you're working for God and you feel God's presence and you see God in everything, even the corrupt system, and you keep on moving forward. And so for people like Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens, and to some extent Joe Rogan, they've gotten better than they were. Like, we've all gotten better. We've all gotten, hopefully we're all getting better, right? We're getting, more refined in our ability to, we're evolving. Even like there's people in the truth community are still saying the same old bullshit, right? That's why always talk about the flat earthers. The same, locked into the same old, obsessed with the same old things and just repeating the same old things over and over again. And, they're not changing their perspective. You should be seeing it on a different level as you move forward. Like, you need to be moving forward, and a lot of people are just stuck. And the sheeple are always stuck, and then everyone else, depending on what your capacity and what your mental flexibility is. And so, yeah, Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens are shills, and they're, on the wrong side of lots of things, but Tucker Carlson certainly gotten a lot better. And Candace Owens, I'm going to show you a little clip from her, not about this. And I realize why she's so hard to listen to. She grew up in Connecticut. I'm from Connecticut, and it's like one of the places, like my last choice, if I had to live anywhere, Connecticut would be anywhere in the United States. Connecticut would probably be one of the last choices. I grew up there, and I just don't like it there. I didn't do well there. It's just not, in all of New England, that area, Boston, New York, and all those New England states, and just the climate alone, but the winters alone. But aside from that, I just the culture. And Connecticut women, again, there'll be some Connecticut women watching this, so it's not all-encompassing statement. But there's something annoying about them. There's just because I was like, is that a California accent? And then I heard her say she grew up in Connecticut. I'm like, oh, fuck that. But she has this clip I'm going to show you about this woman, and it may be true or not, about the guy's lawyer. But it's kind of interesting. But I think Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens are both confronting the left-right paradigm. And whether they're doing it because they're scripted to do it, which I don't, these people aren't, the controlling system, the people I call the controllers, they don't give out like handbooks and training manuals. I mean, we saw this thing with Bibi yesterday when he had this, these playbook that he handed out to all these influencers. But the controllers don't tell everybody every part of the plan. They're just supposed to know what they're supposed to do. They don't even give them instructions, right? So like a way that the controllers would control something, if Candace Owens or Tucker Carlson said something against Israel, then they would be called anti-Semitic, and that would be a way to tell them that, hey, shut up, like Charlie Kirk, shut up. Like, this is the way the handlers work. They don't say this is our dastardly plan, and they include every fucking piece of shit a person out there in the plan. The plan is there, and there's but you're supposed to get it through, whatever things that are going on, right? Like, there's a woman who went to my my undergraduate school, and she was a security guard. She was a prison guard in New York, and she made a lot of money, and they paid well, but she bought a house in some neighborhood, like a New York neighborhood, like old school New York neighborhood. And she said, like, when it snowed, you'd hear one shovel outside, and then every neighbor had to come out and shovel, because one neighbor was out there, and it was like, oh, I better get out there. Like, there was all this pressure in the neighborhood, like all this, neighbors scrutinize. Like, you have these suburban neighborhoods where they scrutinize your lawn, and you're supposed to, there's some kind of a organization there, some neighborhood organization, and they're telling you how to live, and that everyone's trying to keep up with their neighbors. There's not some, I mean, in those cases there's more formal rules, but it's something where it's peer pressure. Like, they don't you don't have to comply, right? Like, it's just something it's like everyone is just wanting to be like everybody else, right? And so people will copy everybody else's point of view. And so the news agencies and all these people, they don't get direct instructions. They don't go in some dark room and they're told this is our new world order plan, and you guys all have to follow these steps, and you'll get more instructions later. There's ways that they have of indicating this is what we want, right? When an issue comes up, and there's ways that they know, all right, I'm not supposed to report on this, I'm not supposed to say this, right? When one of these events happens, right? There's all these shills and people that come out of the woodwork, but they have specific roles to play, and that's all they get. They get that piece of it, right? They get that piece of the role. And so, these people do have their own choices, and it's how far they go. They can grow a conscience, but you see the way that they get ostracized and attacked. And this thing with Israel is weird. Like this whole thing coming out now. I mean, the way that Israel's being about it, like they're just like, fuck you, America, we're here to dominate you. Like we're here to tell you what to think. I mean, Netanyahu's just coming out and like saying that shit, right? And, it's a weird thing. It's not really understandable why it's going in this direction, because you have far left people on the liberal left, the woke left, who are against Israel. And now you have all these, even some of them evangelical Christians and woke and, awakened people in the truth community, the right-wing truthers. And so you have two extremes that are on the same side when it comes to Israel. And now Jeffrey Epstein. Like these things are getting weird, right? Like you have a lot of conflicting demographics coming together. And so, everybody's supposed to be growing and changing, and, all these people, I mean, if they're getting better, they're getting better. Tucker Carlson does a good thing here. I mean, for whatever reason he's doing it, whether he's part of, again, like playing some role. And then there's the divine role, the roles that people play that they're not even aware of, right? And so, in all that, who gives a shit, right? Like if somebody does something good, then they do something good. Tucker Carlson did something good. If he does something bad, then you say this is bad, right? Which, that's all there is. Like it's not, we're not buying fucking encyclopedias from him. I mean, you're not giving him money, right? I hope, And so, like it doesn't. You don't have to be like, oh my God, that person's a shill, a jail. I get into this a little bit in the comment section with flat earthers. Yeah, everyone's a shill, like to some extent, because you've been indoctrinated in a deceptive system, and you never clean all that shit up, right? The stuff that happens when you're kids, when you start, and through your teen years in these various places in your life, you start forming the fundamental building blocks of who you are as a person, and then whatever you've brought in, and then just the conformity and all these things that happen in the system. It's all there to fuck you over. Like it's all there to, undermine your ability to see the truth, right? To see, what your real purpose is here, and become who you're supposed to become. And so, anyways, let's get into the Candace Owens thing here. Okay, so here it is. There's Trump. There's Clinton. There's Tony Blair. And there's George W. Bush, who somehow his hat doesn't fit him. And there's these guys worshiping the golden calf, which I think is named Baal. They did sacrifices to Baal. They do the humping the wall thing here. But there's a control here, right? There's a thing. There's a thing. Why would you have to do that? Like if you go to the Queen, why would you have to call her the Queen if you don't live in England? Or the King? Like, why would you refer to them in terms of your majesty or something, right? Why would you bow? Why would you do their bullshit? Like, you don't have to do their bullshit, right? It's another culture. Like, you don't have to. Certainly, look at it like they're not our king, right? You're not, whatever. And so this isn't, part of your religion, this thing they're doing. And you don't even have to do your own religion. There are rituals that are by choice, right? And so, but they all put on the hat. In a world full of Taylor Swifts and Ariana Grandes, be an Erica Kirk. They're saying she's one of the most popular rising stars on Fox in terms of like these Christian conservatives. Captured ISIS Libya commander Abu Hafs turns out to be Benjamin Efren, an Israeli national operating in one of the Mossad special units. There's a point in Tucker Carlson's thing where he's talking about bombing Qatar, and he said Mossad wouldn't even do it. Like Mossad wanted no part of that. Like it was too extreme for them. They weren't in favor of it. So I don't know if this is true. These are just memes people sent me. I'm getting all these freedom shirts ever since I clicked on the Charlie Kirk. They're pushing Charlie Kirk, toilet paper, TPUSA. That's how I remember it. And they're pushing it on Facebook and probably other places. So I clicked on it. That's how I found it in the first place. They have this thing now. He's throwing out hats, like all that stuff I showed you. But then I'm getting other people claiming to be connected to Charlie Kirk, but they're not. And they're all selling freedom shirts. And then everyone can we get the Epstein files. Best we can do for you is Amelia Earhart files. And they got him here. Like with the Mossad agent arrested while disguised as ISIS preacher was actually Benjamin Efron, an Israeli operative, according to, not mainstream media, Al Jazeera and Iran front page. There's a movie out there that this was, what's that guy named, the comedian Cohen who does Borat. We can't place his first name, but anyways. He plays an Israeli spy that went into Syria, and he was of some kind of Arab descent. So he could, he was there, and he became the defense, like the whatever their Department of War and Department of Defense was. He became the secretary, and then they caught him and they killed him. But this kind of spying definitely goes on. This is what they do, so it's totally believable. And here it is. So here's this is self-explanatory.
She discussed how the prosecutor is picking his opponent in the Tyler Robinson case. Take a listen to her explain that.
Investigative journalist Elizabeth Lane is not giving up on this story. She's been on the ground in Utah connecting the CIA dots, the three-letter agency dots and connections, and she joins us now. Elizabeth, great to have you on the show.
Thank you for having me, Clayton. I looked at Tyler Robinson's case and I thought,
this must be very patriotic because they got a lot of stars. Must be a Patriot channel.
well, why don't I get this guy a lawyer? Because that at least puts me near him so I can understand and control the process. And this is times where they couldn't find the guy a lawyer and they were kind of scrambling around to figure out who was going to be his lawyer. And I started approaching different firms in Utah, trying to get him a lawyer for pro bono. So I walked up to one of the most reputable firms in Utah and I asked them if they were willing to represent Tyler Robinson for pro bono case. And I was extremely surprised what I got from them. First and foremost, they were like, yes, we're absolutely on this because we don't believe that what happened to Charlie Kirk was remotely a case of just a single, crazy kid going up and shooting the guy in the neck. Like, we don't believe that. So we are more than willing to represent him pro bono. So I was like, great. So we started the process. And what happened is we realized that we needed lawyers who are actually certified with death penalty. So their certifications didn't live up to that. But there's another interesting thing. When I did find a lawyer that was certified.
Takes a while to get to it here.
To represent Tyler Robinson, obviously I needed a consent from Robinson's family or Robinson himself because he's actually not a minor. He can consent himself. Ironically, we were unable to get in touch with the parents because as a lawyer, you can't solicit clients. So it's illegal. So you can't just announce yourself that I'm going to represent Tyler Robinson. So I started doing that. So I got into this process and I asked my local lawyer firm, hey, what's the best way to go around here? Like, we need help to get the lawyer from New York who is certified to represent Tyler to get on the case. So he said, whatever you do, Elizabeth, do not get in touch with the firms in Utah that are the most powerful because they are in on it with the state. No matter what happens, they will take the side of the state. I did not listen to him. And
of course you didn't. Of course you didn't listen to him.
I ended up calling one of the biggest firms in Utah just to ask for an advice. Like, what is the situation here? What can we do? They started screaming on the phone. And I was like, why do you even care? Like, you don't have a dog in this fight. Why are you so rude on the phone? So then I said, listen, there is a lawyer who's qualified, and he's actually very famous in New York, wants to represent this kid. All I need is a consent from Tyler Robinson to do so, and we think that you can help. To this, I got a very rude response that only SCORDIS is allowed to find a representation for Tyler Robinson. So SCORDIS is a guy who's running as a state prosecutor. So here's the problem with that. State prosecutor cannot be responsible to find a lawyer for a defendant. That's illegal.
Right, that they're choosing their own opponent.
Yeah, that's what it seems like.
And this is something that I've been wondering about because
Okay, so, you know, we've seen this thing before. These people that get accused of these things usually are dead. But if they're not dead, you never hear from them. And so, you know, I mean, I don't know who this person is and what they're believing. You know, it's just a story that's maybe not very, unless you produce audio tapes, and even then, you know. But this would totally make sense, right? That, you know, and you can't get access to the clients, you can't get access to, journalists can't get access to the accused, because you never hear their story. You never hear their story from them. You get little blips of them going to court and saying like 2 or 3 words. I'm guilty, not guilty, whatever it is, right? And so, you know, they're non-human. They're not, you know, American citizens that get some kind of due process. You never hear from them again. Where's Luigi Mangione, right? Where's like any of these, you know, I mean, there's so many of them. The ones that survive in this to get bum rushed and, you know, pushed through the process and that don't have a public trial and then go to jail or prison, you never hear from them again, you know, and maybe they're not even, you know, they're just actors or whatever it is, right? There's no, you know, whatever. So, yeah, so there's that. So Trump has 100% bailed on his bag of people, and they just too stupid to recognize it, right? Because, you know, dumb fucking stand stuff. But here he is with Kennedy.
But we are the ones that got insulin down to that number, and you're right. They tried to take credit for it. They had nothing to do. In fact, they didn't even know what happened. All of a sudden, the insulin price kicked in at $35, and they asked Biden about it. He had no idea what the hell they were talking about. But after they explained, and they didn't really explain to him because he was not capable really of understanding it. But when they went out and
see, you know, that's true, but he wasn't there, right? Like, he just makes up these stories, and he just talks and makes up reality, and he gets pissed when you call him on it, right? Like, that's how bad this has gotten. Like, he wasn't there. He didn't know what happened with them and that, you know, and he just makes shit up and takes credit for things constantly that he had nothing to do with.
talked about it, they acted like it was a great feat but it had nothing to do with him. And it continues, and we'll get it down even further. But insulin was, people weren't taking it, I would imagine. They couldn't take it. God bless you, Bobby. I hope I didn't catch COVID just there. Don't you have Paxlovid? What is it? Pax? He's got Paxlovid. Give me a Paxlovid immediately.
So Paxlovid is a Pfizer bullshit thing to go with their bullshit vax, right? And so, you know, he, I got a comment about this, which I've already read last night, but you guys haven't heard yet. It's coming. That talks about this, but there's also another video about it. How he's completely fucked the Baja movement. So I talk about this with a comment in a second here. Trump just blew the Maha coalition. It's over. What a disgrace. So I turned on Fox News at some point, and they were talking about Pfizer. They kept on mentioning Pfizer, great partners at Pfizer. I didn't know what they were talking about. I'd switched the channel. But they said Pfizer like 4 or 5 times in glowing terms, right? Because they're getting Pfizer money. And then this happened here.
I'm curious, where are the other companies other than Pfizer? Are you expecting them to come later?
They're all with us. And I was honored to have Albert be the first. He's done a fantastic job with, as you know, with the COVID. He did a fantastic job with a lot of things. He's a leader, and Pfizer is right at the top. You know, it's there. Eli Lilly has been fantastic also, your friend, my friend. And they're all coming in over the next week.
Look at Bobby. Look at this piece of shit, right? And this guy. Why is Dr. Oz there, right? Dr. Oz is, I mean, not only just a one crappy TV show and whatever he was with that stuff, but he lost to Fetterman after he had a stroke, right? And he put the worst debate performance on in history. And the numbers didn't budge. Fetterman came out and said, "Good night, everybody," and then just shit all over himself for an hour on the debate stage because he was incoherent. He was at his worst. I mean, he would get bad when he got depressed and suicidal, but he couldn't understand shit. He just had a stroke. And he wasn't brilliant or a great speaker beforehand. And he put on that worst performance. And Dr. Oz somehow lost. Like, they're so fucking unlikable. Right? And so, in a state that Trump would win during the next election. That's how bad Dr. Oz is. But here he is just, taking Pfizer money, Trump is. Which I'll talk about this in the comment section because somebody talked about this as well. But he made a deal here.
We're making deals with all of them. And I'm
curious, where are the other...
Okay, so I started doing this voiceover you're about to hear, and then I realized I had something else. This is from 2 weeks ago, right? Holy shit, Trump just dropped a red pill nuclear bomb on Truth Social. He posted a video of NIH geneticists and biochemists outlining that vaccines have toxic chemicals like mercury in them and can cause autism. Trump just called vaccines poison. So this is from 2 weeks ago. Here they are here.
Show them the thimerosal bomb, which we keep in a metal container because we're a little afraid of it, and it's a very fine powder.
This is thimerosal, which is labeled very toxic, has cumulative effects, can cause damage to the kidneys, to the respiratory system, skin, to the nervous system. It specifically warns on here that it can cause reproductive and developmental toxicity, meaning that it can cause things like autism and other neurodevelopmental disorders. This is immensely toxic stuff.
And it's in vaccine.
And this is what's in the vaccine. It's important to realize we're talking about a whole range.
So remember, Trump posted this, like this is his Truth Social post. And everyone was saying, oh my God, he's finally doing it. He's calling this out, right? And then he came out and said it's Tylenol, right? And then a week later he makes a deal with Pfizer and then other pharmaceutical companies, right? So, he says things that he plays both sides. He says all kinds of shit. And the dumb fuck Trumpers from Dumbfuckistan, they only listen to the stuff that agrees with them. And they ignore when he says Jeffrey Epstein was a fantastic guy. And they ignore when he says Jeffrey Epstein liked young girls. And they ignore when he's he's going into the dressing room of these young girls. They ignore when he said grab them by the pussy. They ignore all this stuff that Trump shows you the kind of piece of shit he is. And all the deals he's made. And the number of times he's gone back on his words. The number of times he's played you, right? He completely, this is who Trump is, right? And so...
Range of products. Vaccines are a big one because, of course, you're directly injecting it.
Okay, so you get the idea there. So he posted this video, and people thought that this was, he's following through on, he's not, right? 2 weeks later, it's a deal with Pfizer, and Tylenol is now the villain, right? Temporarily. But no one's, for the most part, Tylenol, whoever produces Tylenol, whatever company, they may take a small hit financially, but the liberals are, for every conservative Trumper that's not taking Tylenol, there's a liberal that's taking their doses. There's a pregnant liberal right now who's taking the right wing, is making up for it, right, in terms of the market share. So like I said, there's a comment coming where I address this Pfizer thing more. They made a deal with Trump, basically, and Trump went back on his word because that's what he does, right? People had all kinds of hope for Kennedy, that at least some good things would come out of that. Trump came out against vaccines. Let me put that in here first. Okay, so I went back, and you've already just watched that before this, with Trump talking about posting that thing on Truth Social. I've had that up for a couple weeks. Somebody sent me it saying now about how much Trump is coming through. And, he's completely reversed this. How many times he's got to fuck you over, right? How many times has he got to fuck you over in dumb fuckistan before you realize this guy is not you? He's an elitist. He's about himself, and he makes deals, and he says things as a bargaining chip. He says outlandish things to get people to come to the bargaining table, and he cuts a deal for himself. A $400,000 jet plane from Qatar, and then another $500,000 in taxpayer money to make it into Air Force One. And then he gets that jet when he leaves the office. I mean, all this kind of shit, right? Like he's an absolute grifter and a scumbag. And so, in all that, and I'll get to these comments in a second here. In all that, there are, it's a grooming type of situation, and there are steps along the way before things get really bad, right? Grabbing your guns is a step. Martial law is a step, right? And this stuff where they're talking about Israel the way they are. Like everyone in the world, I mean, all these other countries are voting against Israel. They're voting Palestine in as a member state, in terms of the UN. I mean, all these things, right? They have this universal support, Palestine does. And all these liberal kids and right-wing people are starting to come together in this support of this one issue, an anti-Israeli issue. And, all the stuff, the Jeffrey Epstein stuff, all this stuff that's coming to the surface. And, like I said, you're never going to get the truth, because if they admitted to the truth, and that's what it would take, right? That's the system saying, yeah, there is a deep state, and everything's a deep state. It isn't a right-wing deep state or a left-wing deep state. The whole government is having to manipulate you and lie to you, because if you guys knew the truth, our system would collapse. They'd have to come out and just fucking say that, right? Because that's the truth. That's the reason all this stuff happens is because an evil system needs to run on evil and deception. A system that goes against God. If you're aligned with God, you have divine energy that fuels the system, right? It's the perpetual motion machine. When you as a person are aligned with God, you breeze through life, even through the most, tragic circumstances and difficulties, in ways other people don't, because you are aligned with your soul, you're aligned with the divinity within you, God's path. And so when you're on God's path, it's just, when you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, things just, there's congruency. But when you go against God's will, you're constantly being, there's obstacles and things that are supposed to have you reverse course. There are things out there that are warning you, saying, abandon ship, right? Go back to, go back and turn around and get back on your divine path. And so the farther you go in a demonic direction, the more you have to do demonic shit, and the stronger the lies have to be, and you have to repeat the lies over and over and over again, because the truth always wants to surface. The divinity, you have the right to choose the wrong thing. You have the right to choose wrongly and do the wrong thing, but there are immediate consequences. And the farther you go, the more severe the consequences, the more severe not the consequences of a sense of punishment, but the consequences in the sense of, these are the consequences when you do the wrong thing, right? When you go against God's will. There is the right choice, and that comes with no consequences. There's no consequences to the right choice. And then to whatever degree you deviate from that course, there's forceful consequences, right? There is a reaction to you make a choice, you choose drugs or something like that, and then there's going to be a hangover, right? You get drunk, there's going to be a hangover. There's these things. And then maybe legal things because you did fucked up shit when you were drunk, right? And so, there's always these aspects to things. And so the consequences and the truth is, bursting at the seams, especially now with the internet. People are able to wade through the bullshit and talk about it in a different way. And so when things get really bad, when you have a systemic collapse, then they're just like, fuck you. You go to your bank and they're like, oh, yeah, that's not your money. this is not, no, you left your money in here? No, that's not your money. You think you got money? No, that's not your fucking money, right? And so your money just disappears. All your money in your bank account just goes. Things like that start happening, right? This my merch thing. I realized, back in February of this year, I requested a payment. I talked about this before in one of my earlier video a couple weeks ago. And they said, you requested a payment, but they never said they made the payment. And so they finally responded to me saying that they're going to get it on it. And then I haven't heard anything from them, right? Because they're stealing the fucking money. Like it's a bankrupt company that is connected to YouTube. And so, when shit like that starts happening, martial law, and the way that they're talking about Israel, and whether it's somebody like Candace Owens and Tucker Carlson who are no longer, or Tucker Carlson was no longer a part of Fox News because he couldn't talk about it that way. They're not talking about it on mainstream media, right? They're not, bringing up what Bibi said on mainstream media. You can search for that. It's not there, right? But it's being shown in different places, in places that get a lot more views. And so there is all these people that are turning on Israel that I thought I'd never see that day. And Trump is just coming out and doing things right in your fucking face, and he doesn't care. He doesn't care about the MAGA movement and their opinions anymore. I mean, to whatever extent that they did this Charlie Kirk thing to distract from Jeffrey Epstein. But the system is so fragile and so ready to collapse. They can't, they're not going to admit to shit. And if they did, it would just make the collapse of the system that much faster. And it's going to happen. Like it's in the process of happening. We're on the cusp of World War III. Like whatever big events that happen to be the catalyst to the, guess what, you guys, your lifestyle is no longer in stock kind of thing. It's happening in an accelerated way. And there's nothing anybody can do about it. Like the collapse is going to happen and nobody can control it because this system is demonic and it has to go down. And they've been propping it up and they've been doing a good job of fudging the numbers and keeping it going. And people have done their part by being, in denial in Dumbfuckistan. And so, which I cover here. All right, so let's get to the comments and then I'll, there'll be more of this tomorrow. Oh, one more thing. So I went for a walk with my wife. I was waiting for her in the pasture, and I was scrolling through YouTube videos. And, of course, there's a Borat video because I just said Borat. And that's how fast my phone's here. That, this buying happens. And it's a Borat video that says, throw the Jew in the well. And Sacha Baron Cohen, that's his name. I forgot the first part, 2 parts of his name, who played this did a serious role where he played this true life Mossad agent who ended up spying on Syria, and he was promoted to the head of the Department of Defense, right? And so he was instrumental. He's a hero in Israel. But anyways, in Borat, he goes into this country and western bar, and he's got a country hat on, a guitar, and they introduce him as they don't know who he is, and there's a bunch of, I assume these people aren't actors. And they start singing a country song, and it's about throwing Jews in a well. And by the end, the people are singing along with them, right? So that's weird that happened. I don't think it was in the movie, too. I don't remember the scene from the movie. But it's, kind of a funny song. The whole thing, But anyways, with that in mind, let's go to the comments here. Okay, still Thursday, October 2nd, later on in the evening. It seems like this is when I end up having to get a chance to look at the comments. And I got a bunch of good comments here. So let's go in the order in which they came in. A lot of stuff about Gaza. This one says, Trump made $70 billion on a deal with Pfizer, the same company that created COVID vaccine, aka the cloud shot. He was called the CEO a good guy. Trumpers, are you sick and tired of winning yet? So that was pretty funny. I'm going to cover that. I have a video clip of that somewhere. I said this was going to happen, remember? I said that, he was going to talk about Kennedy and how they're going to make America healthy again. But remember, he made Kennedy eat McDonald's food. And Trump eats McDonald's food. And the last time he was going to nominate Kennedy for health secretary, Pfizer came in and gave him million donation, and he ditched Kennedy. That was Kennedy's own story. So, the same thing repeated it again. So this guy, dude, you got all the Israel thing wrong. That's the whole comment. The guy's name is in those weird is Hebrew letters. A lot of upside down shit. Dude, you got all the Israel thing wrong. Thanks, bro. Thanks, dude. Thanks for clearing that up. Now I can go. I got it all wrong? Okay, so what does that mean? Like, how the fuck are you going to leave a comment like that with no specifics? This is Charlie Kirk failed to see Jesus would be called a terrorist by Bibi. And so, like, that's a video that's 4 videos ago. I don't remember that video. Like, if I thought about it, I could, but I don't want to think about it from some dumbass comment like this. Dude, you got all the Israel thing wrong. Thanks, bro. Thanks, dude. Now you set me straight. And this one, if you say, like this one here, the Old Testament tells many prophecies of Jesus coming and tells about the future events that haven't happened yet. The Old Testament is essential to the New Testament and should be included. Jesus was God in man form, not a spiritual person. He was God in human form, and the only spiritual person everyone should imitate. His name was Emmanuel, which means God with us. Did the Old Testament predict Jesus would come or a Messiah would come, right? and the events that it predicted, are they kind of vague? Are they kind of like, not very specific, right? That could just kind of happen in the course of 3,000 years, right? Or 5,000 years. And so, yeah, they predicted the Messiah, but the Jews didn't think he was the Messiah. And so there's that. And, there's so much more here. But no, it's a shitty book. Like, you make things up and you're exaggerating the accuracy of the Bible. It also sent David out to cut foreskins off, and God told Abraham to sacrifice his only son. And it says that God sacrificed his only son for people. Like, who would do that for people? Would you do that? Would you do that for humanity? Would you do that for all the fucking right-wing or left-wing people, depending on which side you're on? Would you do that for all the people that you dislike and all the shitty people in the world? Would you sacrifice your kid for humanity? It seems like that's a good idea. You think that God would be that fucking stupid to sacrifice his only son for fucking people, right? Like, think about it. Like, why would anybody do that or in the right mind? For you, like for you, to some piece of shit like you, he sacrificed a divine being, right? But here we go with the dumb fuckistan. Wherever you are, dumb fuckistan goes with you, dude. Now that's a T-shirt. My merch company fucked me on the money, and so I never got paid. And I realized it says I requested payment, so they owe me roughly $1,800. My merch, I'm not a salesman or businessman, so. But it would be a good T-shirt. Its neighboring country is fucktardia. And so that was the first dumb fuckistan comment. And then there was this, which brought me to a realization. The picture of dumb fuckistan is clearing up and coming into view. Towards the end of the video, you started talking about spirituality, and the more I listen to you, the more I look into the cleaning and get into a routine for meditation. Well, there is, I put a link in this person's comment to the Gratefullness Meditation channel, but those of you who are interested, it's in the description box, the Gratefullness Meditation channel, not the playlist of videos that's on this channel. I should probably delete that because it confused me. So it's probably going to confuse you. But there's a Gratefullness Meditation channel. It's comprehensive, it's free, and it explains how all of that stuff works. So this is the part where I had the realization. Dude, you are a shill. The earth is flat. The flat earth is the flat earth. Get over it, man. Dude, and then before that, dude, the flat earth is not debunked. It's not, we don't know. No, it's not, we didn't know one lost on that. It's never been disproven. You don't have a fucking working model. Okay? You do not, your model, there's no existing working flat earth model. And if you ask of the average flat earther, they'll refer you to some bullshit video that they don't understand. When you ask the average flat earther, and this dumb fuck, I can tell because the guy can't even fucking articulate his point of view here, right? They can't tell you, this person's saying that it's the flat earth has never been disproven. It's been disproven a bunch of times. Somebody flew a bunch of the flat earthers to Antarctica, and they all realized that there was a 24-hour day there. And then they were all called shills, right? So, yeah, of course it's not disproven when the proof is right in your fucking face. And, I've told you about the things, the scientific tests that I did, watching the sunset and these other things, the sun bouncing, the sun disappearing behind the ocean, but still hitting the clouds. I mean, you can see it, right? It's, that's not a flat earth. That's not the model where the mobile model doesn't work. It doesn't work. It doesn't account for numerous things. But when you're a dumb fuck and you say, oh, that doesn't disprove it, you're a shill. Like, that's all you can say, right? And so, never been disproven, as your globe is less likely than the flat earth is more likely. And I mean, God, dude, are you a shill? That was the first comment. And the second one, dude, you are a shill. The flat earth is a flat earth. Get over it, man. The guy got even angry and posted that. And this is when I realized that the earth is flat in Dumbfuckistan, right? But when you go to Dumbfuckistan, the earth is flat. And so that's, we're starting to define Dumbfuckistan. So this person defines dumbfuck. Dumbfuck definition, dumbfuck, P-H-U-C-K, as an alternative spelling. Intellectual midget who has got not the ability to think in a complex computational way. An individual who lacks the innate intimate knowledge of oneself. Can you use this in a sentence? I'm tired of being surrounded by dumb fucks who aren't capable of thinking for themselves. So, I enjoyed that one. The comment section is getting better from the, just in general. Hey, more comments, Paul. I think that you've changed my mind on another thing. I was pretty defensive of Israel. I don't feel like that's acceptable anymore. Think you have helped me see that. I've been struggling with it for a while, but I think it just doesn't make sense. They've gone way beyond acceptable force, and what they are doing now is just making everything worse. It's a genocide, and that's never okay. And so, yeah, and I mean, I think that it's this point, well, of course, the Tucker Carlson thing I haven't posted yet. And this person, well, that's just something I just want to remind myself of. So anyways, we're still defining Dumbfuckistan. Let me wrap this up here, and I'll continue on with more whatever is. And whatever follows this. And nothing follows this. Only spirituality will save this world. It's Paul Urbano, definitely important for the apocalypse and the ascension. Everyone have a blessed day, and be grateful.